There's a stretch of ocean in the western Atlantic, marked loosely by 3 points: the southern tip of Florida, the island of Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. This triangular region, spanning roughly 500,000 square miles, is known to many as the Bermuda Triangle, or, more ominously, the Devil's Triangle. Over the past century, this part of the ocean has developed a strange and persistent reputation. A number of ships and aircraft have disappeared here, often under seemingly routine conditions, and often without any distress calls or physical evidence left behind. Theories about these disappearances vary widely. Some point to the triangle's location along one of the most heavily traveled shipping and flight corridors in the world, where high traffic alone could explain the number of incidents. Others cite unpredictable weather systems, fast-moving tropical storms, and sudden atmospheric downdrafts that can disorient pilots or capsize vessels with little warning. Beneath the surface, the ocean floor drops off sharply into some of the deepest trenches in the Atlantic. The Puerto Rico Trench, for example, plunges over 27,000 feet. In waters that deep, even a large vessel can vanish without a trace. Some researchers have also studied magnetic variation in the region, areas where compass readings may differ significantly from true north, potentially affecting navigation. And of course, there's always the human factor: mechanical failures, miscommunication, and pilot error. Still, despite the rational explanations, the Bermuda Triangle has captured the public imagination like few other places. Because while the science may be sound, the record remains full of questions. In December 1945, 5 US Navy aircraft, designated Flight 19, took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on a routine 3-hour training mission over the Atlantic. The squadron consisted of TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, piloted by a mix of experienced servicemen and trainees. Midway through the flight, their communications became erratic. The lead pilot reported that they had become disoriented, unable to locate land, and claiming their compasses were malfunctioning. Then, the transmissions stopped. All 5 aircraft disappeared from radar and were never recovered. Even more chilling, a rescue aircraft dispatched to search for Flight 19 also vanished, along with its 13-man crew. 6 planes, 27 men, gone without a trace. In January 1948, a British passenger aircraft known as the Star Tiger was en route from the Azores to Bermuda. It was a Tudor I-4 airliner operated by British South American Airways, carrying 25 passengers and crew. Weather conditions were rough but manageable, and no distress signals were sent. Shortly before its scheduled arrival, the aircraft vanished from radar. No wreckage, no survivors, nothing was ever found. A year later, in January 1949, another Tudor 5-4 airliner from the same airline, this one named the Star Ariel, was flying from Bermuda to Jamaica. It too disappeared without a trace, under clear skies and normal operating conditions. Both aircraft vanished along nearly identical routes, just 1 year apart. And then there's the Carroll A. Deering, a 5-masted cargo schooner built in 1919. In January 1921, the ship was found run aground off the coast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Her sails were still raised. The galley appeared as if a meal had just been prepared. But the lifeboats were missing, and the entire crew had vanished. No logbooks, no signs of struggle, no explanation. Only silence. Among the many incidents associated with the Bermuda Triangle, one remains particularly significant, not because of speculation, but because of scale. In 1918, a US Navy vessel departed port with more than 300 people on board. It never reached its destination. No distress signal was sent, no wreckage was found, and no definitive cause was ever determined. At over 500 feet long, The ship was one of the largest in the Navy's fleet at the time. Its disappearance still stands as the greatest non-combat loss of life in US naval history. This is the story of the USS Cyclops. The USS Cyclops was the second of 4 Proteus-class colliers built for the US Navy. She was commissioned in 1910, constructed by William Cramp and Sons in Philadelphia, and assigned to support naval operations by carrying bulk cargo, primarily coal, to fuel stations and military vessels around the world. At over 540 feet in length and nearly 19,000 tons when fully loaded, she was among the largest ships in the Navy's fleet at the time. Powered by twin steam engines and equipped with multiple cargo holds, the Cyclops was built to move slow, heavy loads across vast distances. She was commanded by Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley, an experienced officer with an unusual background. Born Johann Friedrich Wichmann in the village of Sandstedt, Germany, Worley immigrated to the United States in 1878 and later changed his name after joining the Naval Reserve. Despite his decades of maritime experience, Worley had developed a reputation within Navy circles as an eccentric and sometimes volatile leader. He was known for strict discipline and unpredictable behavior. Reports from former crew members described him as moody, often berating sailors over minor infractions. Some claimed he would patrol the decks at night in a derby hat, long underwear, or even with a sword strapped to his waist. While some officers considered him competent, if unorthodox, not everyone aboard the Cyclops felt at ease under his command. By the time the ship reached the Caribbean, tensions between Worley and the crew had reportedly begun to escalate. In early 1917, the Cyclops was transferred to the Naval Overseas Transportation Service, and by 1918, she had been assigned to wartime logistics, supplying both US and Allied forces during World War I. In February of that year, she was loaded with nearly 11,000 tons of manganese ore in Rio de Janeiro. Manganese was a critical resource for war production, used to strengthen steel. Alongside the ore, the Cyclops also carried a reported 4,000 tons of water in her ballast tanks, helping to stabilize the ship during transit. From Rio, she made a stop in Salvador, Brazil, then continued on to Barbados, arriving in early March. While docked, Worley reported that one of the ship's engines, a starboard cylinder, had cracked. With only one working engine, the ship's speed and maneuverability were reduced. Still, a decision was made to continue the voyage. On March 4th, the Cyclops departed Barbados for Baltimore, Maryland. It was expected to be a straightforward 10-day journey up the Atlantic coast. The ship was carrying 309 people, 15 officers, 221 enlisted sailors, several Marines, and a number of civilian passengers, including the US Consul General to Brazil. She was never seen again. No distress calls were received, no lifeboats, no flotsam or oil slicks. And despite a wide search and a formal Navy investigation, no trace of the Cyclops has ever been found. What happened on that final leg remains one of the most enduring mysteries in naval history. When the Cyclops failed to arrive in Baltimore, naval officials initially assumed a delay. Mechanical issues weren't uncommon, and with only one functional engine, it was plausible the ship had reduced speed or made an unplanned stop. But as the days passed without any communication, concern began to mount. The Navy organized a sweeping search operation across the ship's expected route. Vessels were dispatched to scour the waters between the Caribbean and the East Coast. Radio operators remained on alert. Shipping lanes were watched closely. Still, nothing surfaced. No signals, no sightings, and no signs of trouble. An official naval inquiry followed, but it closed without resolution. The Navy acknowledged the loss, but its final statement admitted that no single explanation could account for the ship's disappearance. It simply left the case open, unsolved. One of the first theories to emerge was enemy action. In early 1918, German U-boats had been patrolling parts of the Atlantic, and the US was deeply engaged in World War I. Some believe the Cyclops may have been torpedoed or struck a mine en route. But naval intelligence found no matching reports in German war logs, and no Allied ships in the area had reported hostile activity at the time. If it was an attack, it left no evidence or debris field, no intercepted messages, and no survivors. Another possibility raised at the time was internal sabotage. Lieutenant Commander Worley's German berth had already drawn quiet suspicion, and rumours circulated that he may have harboured pro-German sympathies. His reported instability and combative leadership style fueled the idea that tensions aboard could have escalated into mutiny or deliberate sabotage. Some suggested that a conflict among the crew might have led to the destruction or scuttling of the ship. But this theory too lacked substance. No credible witnesses, logs, or intercepted communications ever confirmed such events, and without wreckage or first-hand accounts, nothing could be proven. Eventually, attention turned to the ship's design, condition, and cargo. The manganese ore aboard the Cyclops was twice as dense as the coal she was originally designed to carry. Unlike coal, manganese doesn't compact in the same way, and when not properly trimmed or balanced in the hold, it can shift during transit, creating instability that worsens in rough seas. Compounding this, the significant volume of water in her ballast tanks, a common practice to counterbalance cargo weight, may have made the ship sit lower in the water than was safe. Combined with the strain of operating on a single engine, reducing her ability to steer or compensate for rolling seas, it's possible the vessel was in a vulnerable state. Some engineers believe the ship may have suffered a catastrophic failure, either due to sudden hull stress or a gradual structural fatigue exacerbated by the load. If the hull cracked or buckled, the ship could have gone down rapidly, without time to issue a distress signal. And if she sank in the deep Atlantic, particularly near the Puerto Rico Trench, where depths exceed 27,000 feet, the wreck may lie far beyond the reach of even today's deep-sea search technology. The mystery has only deepened with time. In the early 1940s, two of the Cyclops' sister ships, USS Proteus and USS Nereus, disappeared under nearly identical circumstances. Both were Proteus-class colliers, both were carrying heavy ore, and both vanished while travelling similar Atlantic routes. Neither ship radioed for help. Neither was seen again. To this day, all three vessels remain officially missing. Over the decades, the disappearance of the Cyclops has become more than a naval tragedy. It became part of a larger enigma, a string of vanishings that helped turn this stretch of ocean into legend. With no distress signals, no debris, and no trace of the 309 souls aboard, traditional explanations began to feel insufficient. And in the absence of answers, theories rushed in to fill the void. Some of the earliest speculation focused on magnetic anomalies. This region is one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true north occasionally align, a phenomenon known as agonic variation. In older navigation systems, even a small deviation could lead to major disorientation. It's possible the Cyclops, already running on a single engine, simply strayed off course and met its end in waters far from its expected path. Another natural theory centers on rogue waves, giant ocean swells that can surge over 80 feet high and strike without warning. Once dismissed as sailor's lore, these waves have since been confirmed by satellite data. A vessel already weighed down by an uneven cargo load could buckle under such a sudden impact, sinking before the crew had time to react. There's also the lesser-known, but scientifically plausible theory of methane hydrate eruptions. Deep beneath the ocean floor, pockets of pressurized gas can occasionally burst to the surface. In laboratory simulations, ships caught in such an event can rapidly lose buoyancy and vanish. No confirmed case of this has ever been tied to a real-world disaster, but in theory, it's possible, and adds yet another layer of uncertainty to the region's reputation. Then there are the stories that drift beyond science. One of the most enduring comes from pilot Bruce Jernan, who in 1970 claimed he experienced something he called electronic fog. While flying from Andros Island in the Bahamas to Florida, Jernan described entering a tunnel-like cloud formation that distorted his instruments and erased visibility. Inside, time seemed to behave strangely, as if the aircraft was no longer moving through space in a normal way. When he emerged, he was stunned to find he was already over Miami, having completed the 250-mile journey in just 47 minutes, a flight that should have taken at least 75. His Beechcraft Bonanza A36 typically cruises at around 180 miles per hour. To reach Miami in the time recorded, it would have had to maintain speeds closer to 320 miles per hour, nearly double its normal rate. According to FAA records, radar briefly lost contact with his plane, and he landed with nearly 9 gallons more fuel than expected. Jernan insists he experienced a form of time distortion. While skeptics point to navigational error or strong tailwinds, no conclusive explanation has ever been offered, and the event remains one of the most puzzling first-hand accounts associated with the triangle. Some fringe theorists go further, suggesting the region acts as a kind of portal where the rules of space and time temporarily collapse. Others trace the mystery back to antiquity, and then there are those who point upward. Over the years, the Bermuda Triangle has been linked to reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, strange lights, radar echoes, and silent crafts moving at impossible speeds. Some theorists propose that extraterrestrial intelligence may be monitoring or even collecting ships and aircraft that enter the region. They cite eyewitness accounts of glowing discs, vanishing aircraft, and unexplained electrical malfunctions as potential evidence of abduction or contact. While these claims remain outside the bounds of mainstream science, they continue to resonate, especially in cases like the Cyclops, where 309 people vanished into open air, leaving behind no evidence of natural disaster or human failure. According to Plato, the lost city of Atlantis once lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Some believe the ruins of this ancient civilization lie buried beneath the ocean floor in this very region, and that forgotten technology, still active today, could somehow be distorting navigation or affecting the physical world in ways we don't understand. Mainstream science dismisses these ideas as fantasy, but the myth endures, and so do the questions. The Bermuda Triangle remains one of the most heavily traveled regions in the world, yet much of the seafloor in the area remains uncharted. And the deeper the mystery goes, the more room there is for speculation. When a ship this large disappears without a trace, the rational explanations don't always feel complete. And that's where the mind begins to wander. A century has passed since the USS Cyclops vanished somewhere between the Caribbean and the US coast. And in all that time, not a single piece of the ship, or the 309 lives aboard, has been recovered. No wreckage, no transmissions, just a hole in the record, a missing page in history. And maybe that's why the story endures, because the Cyclops isn't just about one ship. It's about what we still don't know. It's about the uneasy silence left behind when a massive steel vessel disappears without leaving a single clue. It reminds us that for all our technology, for all the satellites, sensors, and sonar we've developed, there are still places on this planet where things can simply vanish. The Bermuda Triangle may not be cursed. It may not be a gateway, or a vortex, or a magnet for lost time. But it is a reminder that even in the modern world, mystery still exists, and sometimes it doesn't offer us answers, just questions that drift, like the currents themselves, too deep to follow. While the disappearance of the USS Cyclops remains a haunting mystery, it's also a solemn tragedy. More than 300 lives were lost when the ship vanished, and like so many other disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle, it leaves behind more questions than answers. Wherever those souls now rest, we hope that they've found peace. Thank you for listening. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. If so, be sure to like and follow Lost in the List for more stories like these.